Hello everybody and welcome to part 3 of the 280 country streak world record. Today we're going to be looking at the last 90 countries for this attempt, so that's going to be numbers 191 through 280. If you guys missed the first two parts of this series, make sure to check out the links in the description and in the top right corner. Without any further ado, let's hop into this final part of the country streak and walk through the thought process that went into each round. Getting into round 191, here we had some signs with the Turkish language. Turkey has some unique looking characters as well as sort of combinations of vowels and consonants that are useful to recognize the country. Here we had yellow back plates and white front plates driving on the left side of the road as well, so we're going to be in the UK with that. Round 193 here, we have Generation 4 coverage, sort of Czech or Slovak looking architecture. Those signs in the distance are Czech, and the Gen 4 coverage also indicates that we're going to be in Czechia opposed to Slovakia. Slovakia has not yet published their Gen 4 coverage. I believe it's coming soon, but it has not been published just yet. So for now, Gen 4 is a good way to tell it apart. Here we had bollards that are of the Australian variety, as well as the road lines driving on the left side, longer antenna on the Google car as well. So all things here pointed to Australia. And round 195, we again have Gen 4 coverage here. This time we've got Thai script, so we're going to be in Thailand. That's a good way to tell apart Thailand and Cambodia is Gen 4. Thailand has Gen 4, while Cambodia does not. On to the next round here. This time we have dashed lines on the side of the road, very distinct looking Mediterranean landscape, as well as that green following car. That is something you find in Tunisia. This landscape is extremely characteristic of Tunisia as well. In this round we have car meta and sky meta. We got bars on the car plus rifts in the sky. That is something you find in Senegal, those two things combined. This one was a language solve as well as landscape. That language that you're looking at there is Albanian. Has a sort of unique look to it. Those signs weren't that distinctly Albanian, but once you get a feel for how the language looks, especially just sort of the vowels and types of words they use, it is a pretty distinct language. Combine that with this very mountainous Balkan-looking landscape, and you've got yourself Albania. On to round 199. This time we've got these bollards, which are of the Spanish variety. Spain uses bollards with a sort of yellow stripe in the middle of the black section there. That's a good way to tell apart the country. There's also just the general semi-arid Mediterranean look to it as well. And moving on to round 200, big milestone here. This time we've got winter coverage. Language there indicates that we're going to be either in the Czech Republic or Slovakia. However, that sign style is something you get in Czechia. Czechia also has lots of winter coverage with that kind of antenna as well, while Slovakia does not really have that. So, good way to tell them apart here as well, just the kinds of signs and coverage that they have. So with that, we've made it to a streak of 200, pretty amazing milestone. I was really happy at this point. Started to be more cautious with each round, so getting into round 201 here. This time we are driving on the right. License plates here, I believe, indicated that we were in Italy, as well as the general architecture, language as well. That sign's a little bit hard to read, but it's the style of sign that indicates Italy as well. And Italian license plates have blue on both sides of the plate. Generally look a little bit shorter than normal EU-style plates, especially on vans and things like that. Round 202, this time we had Brazilian poles as well as architecture. Brazil poles are such a good way to recognize the country. You see them in almost every single spot throughout the whole place, so learning Brazilian poles is a really good way to instantly get Brazil. Round 203, we have short dashed lines on the side of the road here, plus Gen 2 coverage, so we're going to be in Sweden. As I mentioned in earlier episodes, Norway also has dashed lines, however theirs are much longer in nature, and also Sweden is much more commonly having Gen 2 coverage. It does exist in Norway, but it's a little bit more common in Sweden, plus these road lines are Swedish and not Norwegian. Round 204, we have more car meta here. This is an interesting one. These are bars that you find in Nigeria, most commonly in the capital of Abuja. I believe it's in a couple other places, but usually it's there. Here we've got Portuguese language, the Brazilian Google car, Brazilian road, and that very red soil as well. Round 206, this time we once again have Australian bollards. We got a lot of Australia and Brazil throughout this entire run, but again, that long antenna, the bollards driving on the left. Here we have the Sri Lankan Google car. It's sort of a blurred out car, and it looks like the French flag in colors. Blue on the left, white middle, and then red on the right. This also kind of landscape is the hilly area, where they have lots of tea plantations in the sort of south and center of the country. Round 208, again we have those Czech signs, and once again this is winter coverage. Czechia has a good amount of winter coverage, and again you can see that little antenna with the little piece of tape or flag thing on it. That is something you see in Czechia quite a bit. Round 209, we've got Gen 4 coverage here, driving on the left. With that style of license plate and that electricity pole, we're going to be in Malaysia. Within Malaysia, Gen 4 is found on the peninsula, as well as that pole is most commonly found on the peninsular side. In this location, we've got a black Google car, as well as this very dusty road. So we were thinking either Argentina or Uruguay for this one. We were just trying to analyze the poles and everything. Landscape felt a little bit more Uruguayan to us, and especially that road. Uruguay has lots of these sort of dirt roads, in comparison to Argentina at least. On to round 211, this time we've got lots of bollards by the intersection here. As I've mentioned before, that's a very Russian thing to see. They love putting bollards up against all of their intersections, however big or small, so we were down in the south part of the country there. Here we've got a concrete road, we've got a white-ish silver Google car. In addition to these people's names and the language being used, those are all indicative of Philippines. The Philippines loves to use concrete roads, and they also do have lots of political signs like that all around. Round 213, this looked a lot like an American suburb. Lots of McMansions all around, freshly mowed lawns. You know the drill. Round 214, here we had a D71 road, which is something you find in France. Took me a little bit to realize that I was looking at that, but once I did, that's an easy way to tell France. Those yellow D whatever roads, that you find those all across France. They're the department roads. Those road numbers do repeat throughout a lot of the departments, so not great for 5K'ing, but it's a great way to get it for country streaks. And round 215 here, we've got a very dirt road here. Poles seem to be Brazilian once again. We also had a Google car that you find in Brazil sometimes as well. So all signs pointed to Brazil for this round. So we're starting to get close to the end here, just got about 60-ish more locations to go, 65. This round we were a little bit unsure of. At first glance it looked kind of like Mexico, however the other signs and things we had here seemed to indicate more of a Colombian type of thing. I believe somebody in chat said something on that truck indicated that it was from Colombia. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but something on the truck there. I think that plate sort of design on the door indicates that it's Colombia as well. And just sort of the landscape in addition to that. This is a little bit of a tricky one. We weren't too sure. We thought Mexico at first, but then in the end we did settle on Colombia. For round 217 here, we were driving on the left side of the road. We've got English language with yellow back plates. That is going to indicate we are in the UK, as opposed to Ireland, which does not have yellow plates at all. So if you're driving on the left with English and yellow plates, you're going to be in the UK. Here we've got a white car driving on the left as well, and that is an Indo-market chain. That's a sort of convenience store chain found all throughout Indonesia, as the name suggests. And round 219, this time we are in Greenland. Now Greenland has lots of different weird Google cars and boats and things that they use for their coverage. We were trying to decide which town this was going to be. I think in the end we just chose a random one, and it ended up being right, as you're about to see. And round 220, here we've got some language there that indicates the Philippines. Barangay is the kind of name for the neighborhoods that they use in Filipino cities, so that's a good way to recognize it if you see barangay or sort of that abbreviation as well. On to round 221. Here, this is another US-Canada toss-up. The license plates seemed like they were possibly Connecticut. Wasn't too sure, though. It felt like the Northeast, in any case. And then we also had an amazing American flag peeking through a gap in the trees there. Absolutely incredibly placed. And it was actually New Hampshire there, interestingly. Round 222, we've got Gen 4 coverage, driving on the right, and we have those barbershop-style poles that you find in Taiwan, again with that black and yellow striping that goes all the way to the ground. That is something you see in Taiwan. Round 223, we got more Gen 4 coverage here. Electricity poles that are of the hexagonal shape, which you find in Mexico, as well as this kind of architecture, the sort of multicolored buildings. That name there, Hidalgo, is a thing you see in Mexico a lot. Pretty common name to be used there. Here we've got Gen 2 coverage. Language on that sign there is French in addition to that, so those two things combined indicated that we're probably going to be in France. The electricity pole there is also a French one, to differentiate between something like Belgium, for instance. But yeah, with the pole, the language and everything, we are going to be in France. At this point, with a streak of 224, we had beaten third place's record, which was 223, so we were really happy. We had third place in the bag for ourselves. With this round, we are in Curacao. We have car meta. The Curacao car meta is a black front of the car with sort of bars on the sides as well. Good way to recognize it. It also has a fairly distinct architectural style as well, but the car meta, of course, is the easiest way to get it. On to the next game here, and once again here we've got a white Google car. With these kinds of electricity poles, we are going to be in Cambodia as opposed to Brazil. They can look kind of similar, as well as the landscape, but these poles are of the Cambodian variety instead. Round 227, driving on the right here. This seemed to be the United States at first glance, just sort of with the landscape we've got. We had wide yellow lines in the middle there, which is something you find in Oregon and Washington a lot. For some reason, not sure what the reason is for them having wider yellow lines, but I didn't actually guess there. I think this was in Oregon, based on the lines, but yeah, this is the United States, just based on the road markings and landscape. Yeah, it was in Oregon there. Round 228, we've got Gen 4 coverage here once again. This time we're driving on the left, and we have bollards that indicate New Zealand. You can tell New Zealand and Australia bollards apart because New Zealand's are more tall and skinny, and they've got more of a red section that goes all the way around. Next round here, we had lots of banners with the Indonesian flag colors, a great way to get it right away. And round 230, another Gen 4 location. This time we're driving on the right. The sort of landscape here, that sort of mountainous rock thing. I forget the proper geologic term for it, but that's something you find in Brazil sometimes. That sort of protruding mountain thing. I forget what the name of that is, but this sort of green mountainous area with Gen 4 coverage and sun in the north is going to be Brazil. Taking us into the final 50 locations here, we are driving on the right. We have the Nigerian following police car here, so that's a great way to recognize the country right away. I decided to flex my Nigerian road knowledge here and choose the right stretch of road that was just west of Benin City. Managed to get actually really close to it on the road. I wasn't expecting that. I was just hoping it would be the right road, but that was a nice little fun thing to do. Here we've got a black Google car, very shrubby, deserty landscape and sun in the north, with Spanish language. It is going to be Argentina. Next round here, we once again have that Sri Lankan Google car with the French colors. We also have the Sri Lankan language here. I forget the exact name for it, but it's very circular and flowy looking as well. So if you have that plus the car, you are 100% in Sri Lanka. Here, the language seemed to be either Indonesian or Malay. Checking on the electricity poles there, those are Indonesian poles. I believe you can recognize them with those 3 sections at the top, as compared to Malaysian poles, which I don't think have that. So that's a good way to differentiate the countries in this way. Also, that green road sign, Malaysian signs are usually blue, so that's another good way to tell them apart. And round 235, this time we've got Romanian-looking architecture and electricity poles. That sort of stepladder design, but it's more of a chunky-looking bollard. It's wider. That's something you find in Romania. Good way to tell it apart from Hungarian poles, for example. Moving on to the next round here, we once again have language indicating either Indonesia or Malaysia. However, this time it's the landscape and the architecture that gives it away, as well as the language being used. This architecture is characteristic of Malaysia, as well as the Chinese characters. There's a pretty sizable Chinese population in Malaysia, so that's a good way to identify it as well. For this round, we've got Gen 2 coverage. We also have South African road signs and place names being pointed out, as well as those yellow outside lines. For this round, we are in Gen 4, somewhere in Europe. This round we solved using language. On that construction sign, that is German, so Gen 4 plus German means you're going to be in Austria. There's also coverage, of course, in Germany. However, it is only Generation 2, and Switzerland's coverage is LOCAM. Round 239 here. This time we had some short antenna on the car. We had Portuguese license plates as well, in addition to the electricity poles, which are also of the Portuguese variety. Portuguese license plates have that yellow strip on the right as well. I mentioned that in the last episode, I think, but a really good way to identify it if you're not too sure about the poles or the landscape is to look for those license plates. And round 240 here, we have a white Google car. Sort of language there indicating that we're going to be in Africa. With white car like this and this sort of landscape looks a lot like Botswana. That, again, sort of semi-arid, shrubby, trees-looking landscape in comparison to South Africa, like I've mentioned in the previous episodes. We went for Francistown here, I believe. I think South by told me to try it, go for the Pog Factor guess, and I do believe it actually was there. We'll see. With that, we are only 40 countries away from the end of the streak here. We are getting close to the end here. Again, we were taking things nice and slow, trying to be very cautious here. For this round, we had Danish bollards as well as road markings. Denmark uses those very short dashed white lines on the side of the road. For this location, we had some Portuguese on that green sign, as well as a Google car that you find in Brazil, and of course, those classic Brazilian poles that you see all throughout the country. So 3 really good clues there. Number 243, this time we've got a long antenna. We also had those red and white painted curbs driving on the right, as well as yellow license plates. Plus this kind of architecture indicates that we're going to be in Israel. Number 244, this time we've got a short antenna on the car. Sort of Mexican-looking pole in the distance, seems sort of hexagonal. We also had the pickup truck next to us, which is the biggest giveaway here. Zooming in on the license plate, you can see that it is sort of the more US-shaped license plate. That is the shape they use in Mexico as well. Also, with that design on it, Mexican states do have specific designs for their plates as well. So seeing that shape of a license plate plus it having a design indicates Mexico. And of course, we also had the Mexican electricity pole in the distance. And round 245, we've got Gen 4 coverage here. We are also driving on the left, I believe. Yep, we should be because we are in Thailand. You can see the Thai script there. I believe those lampposts are also something you see in Thailand a lot. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's a thing in Thailand. But in any case, Gen 4, driving on the left with Thai script, hands down Thailand. And at this point, with 245, we had claimed second place for ourselves, as the second place streak before had been 244. So second place was solidly ours. The first place score was 249, so if we finished this entire game successfully, first place streak would be ours to claim. Here, the road signs were Italian. It's the sort of blue arrows with the white text. We also had Gen 2 coverage here as well, something to see in Italy quite a bit. Round 247, license plates here seemed to be Italian once again, also the sort of sign style as well. But again, Italian license plates have blue on either side of the plate, as opposed to normal EU plates which just have the blue strip on the left side. Round 248, we were in Generation 4 coverage here. We had French language on that sign as well. License plates seem to be French. French license plates, the new ones at least, are actually kind of similar to the Italian ones. However, the blue strip on the right side of French plates are a little bit narrower, I think, and also the plates are usually wider. This was to tie first place with this round, and speaking of tie, we had tie flags here visible, so giving us the score of 249, allowing us to get first place tied. And moving into round 250, this was the one to decide if we would get first place all to ourselves. We ended up in Japan. we have low cam coverage. Driving on the left, solid yellow line that you see in Japan sometimes. Also the very distinct Japanese architecture and kinds of cars that they drive there as well, giving us a streak of 250 and first place to ourselves. But we kept going. We kept on moving, hoping to push the streak to its boundaries and see how far we could get. On to the last 30 games here. We've got a New Hampshire license plate on that Subaru, I believe. So anyway, the road lines here and the electricity poles and the US flags as well indicate that we're in the US. I tried my luck with New Hampshire, and it was actually there. Round 252. This time we've got architecture and license plates indicating that we're in the EU somewhere. The bollards there are of the Czech and Slovak variety. They have that sort of double orange line there. However, the architecture here was the deciding factor to choose between Czechia and Slovakia. We weren't too sure, wanted to take our time and decide for sure here and not kill the streak so soon. So we were really just taking our time, soaking it all in. But it seemed a little bit more Czech here. According to South by in the chat, Czechia uses more white houses than Slovakia. I'm not sure how comprehensive that is for the entirety of both countries, but that led us to guess Czechia in the end. Round number 253, we are driving on the right. We've got a white Google car as well. So we're trying to look at all the signs and the landscape and understand where exactly we are going to be. Here we had the Colombian cross on the back of the signs. Colombia uses a sort of cross shape to support all of its signs. Doesn't matter the shape, they usually have them on the back of the signs. A great way to identify the country. Colombia also has yellow license plates, which is another great way to figure it out as well. Next round here, we had low cam coverage once again. The sort of plants we had here were indicative of Hokkaido. You see those kinds of plants in the far north of Japan a lot. In this round, we had a white Google car, sun in the north, and that stop sign pole with the yellow and black is something you see in Botswana. I think they use that signpost for a lot of their signs throughout the country. A great way to identify it and tell it apart from South Africa if you're not sure. Just 25 more rounds to go here. This time we had dashed lines on the side of the road that are shorter. We also had Swedish language and Swedish style road signs here, so lots of good clues for Sweden. For this location, we've got a white Google car with sort of North American style road signs, sun in the north, and this temperate sort of Mediterranean looking climate as well. That's something you find in Chile quite a lot, but especially that white Google car. If you can see a lot of the car, you're going to be in Chile there. On this round, we once again had the Sri Lankan Google car, as well as the language there, that very circular, flowy looking script, plus the Google car as well. On to the next one here, we have Carmela. That's a car you see in Kenya. The Kenya snorkel, this is one variety of it. There's also another kind with a larger snorkel on a white car. And for this round, for number 260, we have a black Google car. That sign has the Korean language on it, notable for its circles within its characters a lot. And that road sign style as well is something you get in Korea. 20 more countries to go. For this location, we were driving on the left side of the road. We also had an interesting language style there, as well as that rock wall, and the use of English as well. All things here pointing to Malta. Malta is one of the few European countries driving on the left, along with the UK and Ireland, so it's a good way to recognize it. If you're driving on the left and it looks Mediterranean, you're going to be in Malta. Next round here, we had Spanish on the road. Once again, we had that Colombian cross on the back of the signs. Surefire way to tell that you're in Colombia. That kilometer marker as well is something you find in Colombia. And of course, they use Spanish language and drive on the right. In round number 263, we had some interesting looking landscapes. We had a yellow plate, which at first I thought was going to mean we were in Sri Lanka. Then I noticed we were driving on the left, and we also had the script there, so pretty interesting. That's another thing that Sri Lanka has, is yellow license plates. So if you're not sure about it within the scope of Southeast Asia, that's a good way to tell Sri Lanka apart from other places. And round number 264, we once again have some African car meta. We've got the Ghana tape on the right front bar. That means you're going to be in Ghana. And number 265, we've got white road lines, North American style signs, and again, that very large visible section of the white car, plus white road lines also indicates Chile. "15 more rounds to go here. This time we had winter coverage, driving on a dirt road, very grid-style landscape here, as well as English on that sign, indicating that we're going to be in Canada. Canada has lots of this sort of dirt road coverage, that sort of stop sign style as well, and also the street sign style is something you find in Canada. But again, it's just sort of that dirt road and this sort of landscape you see in the prairie provinces of Canada. Next one up here is the other variety of the Kenya snorkel. It's got a larger snorkel on the right side of the car, plus a sort of silvery white car visible. So that's a surefire way to get Kenya. In round 268, we got Gen 4 coverage here and some German language. Again, as I've said, that indicates Austria. Not to mention it says Wiener there, of course, for Vienna. Next round here, this time we had Danish road signs. It's those red signs on a sort of short little signpost. You see those all throughout Denmark. And for this round, we had a black car driving on the right, single yellow line, and fall time coverage. You see that quite a lot in South Korea. Also an interesting road sign there with a trumpet on it. I believe that is exclusive to South Korea, indicating something about honking your horn, perhaps? I'm not sure what it means, really, but I do believe that that is exclusive to South Korea. But everything else here as well. Black car, Asian-style trees, center, single yellow road line as well. With just 10 more rounds to go here, we were starting to feel unstoppable. The streak just kept on going, kept on getting these rounds really fast. For this location, we had a short antenna, Spanish language on that sign. The sign style reminded me of Mexico, so we were safe enough going there. Round 272, we have Gen 4 again, and those Brazilian poles. Sometimes in Brazil, they like to paint the bottom of them white, another distinct feature of Brazil. Round 273, this round we spent quite a while on. This is a Canada-US toss-up. We were in a mobile home park in Gen 4 coverage, so it's really tricky because in a mobile home park, you end up getting these sort of very vague landscapes. So the street signs are not usually dictated by the local governments, so they can look like anything really, as you saw there. So with this kind of landscape, it can be really tough to decide, is this the US or Canada? There was one big thing that I saw here to convince me that we was more likely the US, and that was the license plate on the back of the car just to our northeast here. You can see me looking at it right there. It's got a green at the top and blue at the bottom. That made me think it might be one of the Michigan variant plates. There's a Michigan plate of the Great Lakes that has those colors in that pattern, so I was thinking maybe that's the Michigan plate. But other than that, we did not really have any solid clues to tell us if this was Canada or the US. We sort of went through all the Canadian provinces trying to think, could this be in that province? We ruled out most of the Atlantic provinces, all the prairies, of course all of the very north territories as well. So that really left us thinking, well, it could really only be Ontario realistically. Maybe Quebec, but it was also English language, so it seemed more likely to be the US plus that one license plate I saw. In the end, we decided to go for Michigan, and lo and behold, it was in Michigan. On to the next round, moving on right along, we've got Gen 4 coverage here once again, and would you look at that, we've got those Brazilian poles with white at the bottom. So Gen 4, one of the only countries in Latin America with Gen 4 is Brazil. This time, speaking of Portuguese, we had a Portugal pole there, as well as this sort of landscape reminding us of the Iberian Peninsula, but these electricity poles are ones you find in Portugal. With that successful Portuguese round, we are moving on to the final complete game, rounds 276 through 280. This was the last full game that we completed. It was, of course, on round 281 where we messed up. We are almost there. Last 5 rounds for this crazy, crazy country streak. In this location, we had Mexican-style poles there once again with that hexagonal shape. Landscape reminded us more of the Yucatan area, so that's where I went for. Round 277 brought us some very nice Japanese low-cam, always a great thing to get on a country streak. Nice and simple to recognize right away, with low-cam and visible car. Here we had, once again, Portuguese language plus Brazilian architecture and poles. Second to last round here, we once again ended up in Brazil. We had a car that you find in Brazil, as well as this very red soil and rolling hill of agricultural areas. This is something you find in southern-ish Brazil. But again, that very red soil is all throughout Brazil, and those kinds of pines as well, I believe, are quite distinct for the southern part of Brazil. Not sure if those are truly the Parana pines, but they are the kinds of trees you see in South Brazil. And round number 280, here we had some road signs of the Tunisian variety, pointing out some Tunisian cities. So that was a nice easy send for us for round 280, the last successful round of the country streak. So moving on to round number 281. This was a real tricky round to get. We ended up on a very narrow road, passing through a sort of fern-filled forest here. We were not sure where this was going to be. The trees, the plants, and everything just seemed quite vaguely Northern Europe. We were thinking UK or France. Those were the top two countries at the forefront of chat and my mind. We just were not sure which one to go for. We spent quite a while analyzing all the different plants we could see, the type of antenna we had and everything. In hindsight, we really should have gone France because it was France. However, we were convinced that it was going to be the UK, just based on the plants and things, and also because the road was so narrow. The UK has tons and tons of very, very narrow roads, whereas France, they do have some, but not quite to the extent the UK does. So in the end, we went for the UK, and it ended up being France, killing our streak of 280 on the 281st seed. So with that, the streak came to an end, but it was an absolutely insane run. Probably one of the craziest streams I've ever had on Twitch. I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody who was there in chat, helping me get through some of those tricky rounds. Could not have done it without you guys. So guys, thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed all 3 of these episodes. Until next time guys, have a good one, and I will see you later.